what about learning and failing and those kind of things? I gotta believe you must do projects where you have theories and then they don't pan out. How do you deal with that?
Sure. That's the best part, right?
That's the best part?
Yeah, when you think you know something and you find out that something else is true, I think that's a lot of fun.
Welcome to Coffee with Mr. IoT. My name is Robert Schmidt. I am Deloitte's Chief Futurist, also known as Mr. IoT. And today my guest is Christine Richardson. You are Director of Research and Development at Ecolab. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I have to start by saying one of my favorite topics, but also one of the hardest topics to talk about, I find, is the human impact of IoT. I think there's so much there that makes human impact. And in my fantasy, you live that every day.
Right. At Ecolab, it's actually pretty easy because of our mission. So everything is around safe food, clean water, healthy environments, and abundant energy. I have to count to make sure I get all four. But the mission is something that I think most people there are really passionate about. And IoT is one way of making sure that we meet that mission.
Is there one you keep forgetting or not really?
You know what I do is I mix up the adjectives with the...
I mean, I have to admit, this is one of those things I admire, right? There's something really awesome about working on those things. When I hear research and development, which ones of those, do you work on all of them at the same time? Is there a specific focus for you? Which ones... How do you go about that?
Right. So my team is cross-functional, so we support all of the different divisions and missions. But the industrial segment, so the clean water, is definitely in the forefront of IoT for our company.
And you work on this globally or just in the US?
Globally, yeah.
Got it. So when we talk about clean water, is this something that's more prominent in other places of the world? Give me a little bit of a feel for what does clean water mean for the US versus other parts of the country?
It depends country by country, but a lot of countries are increasing their regulations. So China actually is pretty tough right now in terms of their requirements for water quality, and that's fantastic to see. So they're really on the cutting edge of that. But we have customers in over 170 countries. So there's definitely a global reach to our business.
So you have a long history. Things have really come along. I gotta believe that IoT really changed what you do. I know you had the mission a long time ago, but sort of like having all these sensors now really must have changed your business. Can you tell us a little bit about the history?
Oh, sure. So we started with 3D TRASAR back in the 80s. So there was a big need from our customers, especially around cooling water, to really understand corrosion, scale, and biofilm growth. And there was some discussions about, is there a way to be able to trace our chemistry throughout the process, one, to help increase efficiency, but also to reduce water usage. And so that's how 3D TRASAR was born. So we're detecting the chemistry, so we actually have proprietary polymers that we use that are tagged so that we can read that polymer and see it through the process. We determine...
So let me just make sure I understand. You inject a polymer somewhere along the way into the water, and it gets traced along the way.
Yes.
That's fascinating.
Yes. Yeah, and then we have lots of years of experience with these customers, and so we have a very great modeling group that really understands the process, and so can read the signals and then determine what needs to be done.
So in the 80s, we ran stuff from computers down in the basement. There was no cloud. I'm just making some of the assumptions that what has changed. What has changed for you in terms of what you can do today versus what you could do back then?
Right, you're right. The cloud is a huge enabler. So you can do... I think the big change has come from looking locally at a specific plant or process to looking more globally, either within a certain company at several of their plants and making comparisons, or looking across industries even for insights. So we're up to 6 billion data points a month or something crazy like that. So there's a lot of insights that can be drawn across different industries based on that data.
So that's interesting. Across industries, do people share data across industries? How does that work about, how do they go about collaborating versus privacy and so forth? Right. And I know you keep the data secure and private to things, but how willing are people to share data? How does that go?
Yeah, I'm not so familiar with the data sharing piece of our business, but what we do leverage is the backbone and the solution models. So we use that across various industries, and the infrastructure is often very common there.
Interesting. So you work in R&D, which means you work on the things we won't see for another, 3 years, 5 years?
Right. Sometimes sooner.
Sometimes sooner. Okay, so give me an idea I know there's stuff you can't tell me otherwise we can't really release it, but give me an idea of what are the problems you're trying to work on, sort of like what are the things that we should look forward to?
Right. So one of the big trends in the industrial segment is moving from, I talked about the connected chemistry, right? We're managing our products, we're detecting and dosing based on that. We're moving towards actually understanding, monitoring, and predicting the health of our customers' asset. So, going from, we're treating scale and corrosion to we're actually monitoring the performance and predicting the performance of a heat exchanger, for example. So something that is actually very directly important to the customer.
So it's actually really what matters to them. They sort of yes, we know the water corrodes my heat exchanger, but really, I want to keep the heat exchanger fine. You're actually moving all the way to, I'm going to take over the health of your heat exchanger.
Exactly. And we've talked about this previously, but the value to the customer is really what's important, not the technology or the IoT or the cool thing that you're introducing. It's really where that value is. And so in this case, their asset is what they really care about. So we're excited to be able to first of all, have the understanding to be able to make that connection and then make it really simple for the customer to see.
It's got to be a big change in terms of how you think of yourself too, if you start actually owning the health of the asset rather than the chemistry of the water and tracing, right?
Well, it's interesting because Ecolab has 23,000 field and service employees, and so we've always been very close to our customer. And whenever there's been an issue, we're on site there to solve it. And so I think we've always had that ownership of our customers' outcomes. And now this is maybe formalizing a little bit more.
Interesting. Yeah. That's a very good point. Yeah. So that's water. Can we talk about some of the other I know there were 3 other ones.
Yeah, so one of my favorites is around healthy environments. So
you gave a great use case today. Can we talk about that?
Yeah, that's a fun one. So in hospitals now, it's actually really sad that the hand hygiene rate, so the rate at which healthcare professionals are washing their hands, is less than 40%. And so, yeah. And that's when it hits, close to home for everybody, right?
It does.
Yeah. So we've released a new product called Ecolab Hand Hygiene. And what it does is it monitors healthcare providers. So when they come into a patient room, before they go to greet that patient, they need to wash their hands or else an alarm will sound. And so that drives the compliance. It makes the patient aware. They like to see the green light to make sure that they're actually...
Where is the green light?
That's a good question. I don't know where the green light is. I think it's actually on their badge.
On their badge, yeah.
Yeah.
So really, just for me to understand that I got this right, you originally had dispensers with hand cleaning product in there, right?
Right.
That's what you started selling at first.
Right.
And then you realized people aren't using it, so what you created is a service around that where the badge that they carry interacts with the dispenser, and it knows you were within that radius, you used product. Therefore, the assumption is you didn't just flush it down the drain, but you used it, and therefore then when you walk up to the bed at another place in a certain radius, you're safe to go in there. Is that
correct.
sort of correct?
Correct.
That's amazing. It's sort of really you combined a smart dispenser with location-based services with the whole application. I love that. That's an amazing example.
Right, and it's fun and it's simple too, right? In the end, it drives compliance, so that's fantastic.
So I have this funny thought, and sometimes I gotta follow that up. Do you have dispensers like this at home?
No, there's a
How do you feel about hand washing now that you know?
Oh my gosh, I am actually I was very happy to see here in your restrooms that you have the wipes right by the door so you can actually grab the handle and open it to leave. That was wonderful.
So it does affect you personally,
It
life in
does.
some way, right?
Oh yeah, and when I go into a fast food restaurant or a truck stop on the highway, I like to see our products. It makes me feel a lot better for sure. Yeah.
So hygiene, there's sort of like this 2 of the 4. What about the other 2? I just love every single one of them. So I just want to get an example for each one of them, if that's okay.
Sure. So safe food is another big one. So, maybe thinking about fast food restaurants, we have a division called EcoSure, which actually does auditing and making sure that the temperature that the food is at the right temperature to make sure that we don't have health issues there. There's, cleaning products that we offer in those markets. Making sure that the chemistry of the dishwashers are correct to be able to sterilize all the utensils and cooking preparation tools that people use. So that's another really important one.
So you actually have connected dishwashers.
We do.
Are we going to get that at home? No, I'm serious. I mean, I have a smart fridge at home, and by the way, I thought it's going to be great, and it's my least used connected device at home, but I wonder, maybe that makes total sense that you have clean dishes. Do you think we're going to have connected dishwashers?
I'm not sure. The industrial dishwashers are so different than what you have at home. So you're talking about washing dishes in a few minutes versus our dishwashers at home, which I don't know about yours, mine takes a few hours. So it's a very different environment. So I'm not sure if the metrics would pay off. Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting, right? If you think about it, I feel that many things have come through the consumer side, right? If you think of smart thermostats, we had them at home before they actually showed up in my office.
Really?
Yeah, you had them in the office before you had it at home. I had a much smarter thermostat at home before they started being smart here. So.
Smart in terms of letting you control it, or smart in terms of there being some control?
Okay, fair enough. Smart to my perception. They looked better. They were easier to control. They reacted when I walked by. I still can't control the thermostat in this room, for example.
Right,
so
right.
You're right. I don't know. Maybe it's not smart. It's a good point. Yeah, so fair point. So, and what's the 4th one?
Oh, the 4th one is abundant energy. So we do a lot of work with in our water industries with nuclear power plants. We actually have a downstream oil business that we support. So there's a number of different technologies there.
How is IoT helping us to? I guess it's cleaner power, it's more power with the same. How is it helping us?
Yeah, so it's reducing the energy in a lot of processes. So we mentioned the heat exchanger example before, right? That's going to reduce the energy that's needed for that process. For nitrogen production, for example, we have an Omni product that really reduces the energy and also reduces water usage. 3D TRASAR reduces water usage by something like 30%. So there's a lot of, I think just by, and I'm sure that you're really familiar with this, right? When you can actually monitor something, you see it get better. And this is very true for us.
Okay, interesting. So I want to switch topics a little bit. You work in a field that many of us, you do a lot of research and development, which means you get a lot of theories, you try stuff out, and then it pans out, it doesn't pan out. Mm-hmm. So I think you are in a way much more equipped to be in the forefront. Many people who do IoT projects feel like they're in the forefront of an IoT project. What thoughts do you have for them to really sort of like get prepared for that? What learnings do you have and so forth?
I think the biggest thing, and it's a theme that keeps coming up, is really understanding the customer and the value that you can bring. So there's lots of new technologies that we can develop that we're ready to go to market with. But if the value isn't there for the customer, it doesn't make any sense. When it is, when the costs come down or the market changes in some way, we're ready. But I think really understanding what the biggest needs are internally and externally really drive that R&D.
What about learning and failing and those kind of things? I gotta believe you must do projects where you have theories and then they don't pan out. How do you deal with that?
Sure. That's the best part, right?
That's the best part?
Yeah. When you think you know something and you find out that something else is true, I think that's a lot of fun. So we do a lot of periodic prototyping. And that's one of the benefits with working closely with our customers is that we can work with them, really test solutions internally, and then work with our customers to develop those further. So I think that trying to figure out how quickly you can fail, what's the one thing that's really going to kill a project or a hypothesis, and figuring that out as fast as you can. So failing fast is a great thing that I think we've really embraced within R&D at Ecolab.
I always, when we have these conversations, I always say learn fast rather than fail fast. I sort of like makes me feel better when I learn rather than fail, but it's exactly the same thing.
Right. That's a much better way of saying it.
I don't know. I have a thing personally that I can't give up sometimes. So I'm curious, when is the point for you to decide, or how do you make that cut of sort of like, I've proven myself enough that it doesn't work?
I think that is one of the nice things about having a company that is so broad, is that there's so many different projects to work on.
Oh, so you jump to another one.
So you jump to something that has a more attractive, ROI. Yeah.
I have to say the other thing that I heard listening to you, which I thought is interesting too, is when I think of R&D, I think of people in white labs in some laboratory. Mm-hmm. But you actually talked about this being very much with your customers and clients.
Right.
Is this because the client wants it to do with you? How does this go? I'm really curious. Do people sort of like say, yes, I want to be on the forefront with you?
So we do still have those white coat chemists in the labs, and so I think they're very important to our company, especially given that we're based on this chemistry model. But yeah, our sales and service team, I mean, they're in the field with our customers all the time, and the only way as an R&D team that we can really understand their feedback is to be out there with them.
So where are you going to go next? What's your next trip to a customer?
Oh, good question. I'm not sure where I'm going next. It'll probably be a water customer. Yeah.
Do you have a personal sort of like, can you pick even a favorite of like, what are the problems that you like to solve the most?
There's not a specific problem, but I love the types of problems that are messy because they involve technology, people, and a tight market, right? That just makes it a lot of fun because you're coming at it from all angles.
I'm laughing because you said messy and you use technology in that. And I just talked with someone about this where within Deloitte, we brought our strategists together with our technologists and they work much closer. Mm. And I said technology is always messy. There's always something broken. There's always something that doesn't work.
Right.
And for the strategist, that's like, what do you mean? It's like, here, it's a perfect PowerPoint and it's a perfect presentation. I'm
right.
like, yeah, that's not how technology works.
Right.
It works 80%. And then we go and like, well, hang on, this is, I can't do it that pretty, right? And
right.
So that's a really interesting thing. That's why I laugh when you said messy and technology, because I totally think that's
right.
true.
Yeah, and that's where the learning fast comes back, right? So you can only get to that 80%. So what does that do? You have to kind of go back and forth and iterate and figure it out.
Yeah, my problem is if you come, and some people know this, it's dangerous, and now more will know, but if you tell me you can't do this, that's like the biggest motivator. It's like, you can't do this. I'm like, what do you mean I can't do this? No, anyhow, so I'm curious, you work in this really interesting area. Mm-hmm. How does that affect you? I mean, we talked about soap, but in a bigger way, how does it affect you personally? What does that mean for you?
Right. Yeah. It's always driven my career. So I started off in the semiconductor industry. And I loved my day-to-day work, but I was not very excited about making semiconductor chips faster. So I got into solar energy and LEDs, and now I'm extremely excited to be at Ecolab because of our mission.
I really thought I'm going to get myself an electric car, but I haven't quite pulled the trigger.
Oh, no?
Do you have one?
I have a hybrid, but it's not all electric, yeah.
That's better than me.
Yeah.
I don't drive as much. I fly too much. It's interesting, actually. I don't know if you watched, but we had Greta Thunberg, I'm going to say her name wrong now, but she sailed all the way from Sweden to Norway.
Right.
Because there was sort of like this interest in the least carbon emission possible, and so there's this whole thought about flying. And I the one thought I had was like, well, this is interesting. Are we gonna start flying electrical planes? What does that mean for planes to be electrical and so forth?
Right.
So that'll be really interesting.
Yeah, that will be interesting. I mean, I think it's really interesting to me how Tesla has made the electric car so fascinating and attractive for people, right? It's completely changed that market.
It has. And I listened to the CTO. We had him at one of our meetings at one point, the CTO of Tesla, talk about how they're all about breaking norms. It's all about sort of like not accepting the norm and sort of like breaking outside. That really helped them. And that fascinates me. I always have to think about, is what I've learned helping me, or is it actually hindering me around new thoughts?
Right.
So how do you keep innovating, sort of like the innovator's dilemma?
Right. Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think, that's the beauty of cross-functional teams too, right? You get all these different perspectives from all over the company and from your customers, and trying to look at the problem from a different angle. We heavily rely on design thinking as well. So, we talked about the bottoms up. Okay, you have your chemistry first, and then your sensing and dispensing, and now you have the cloud, and you can make these, predictive models and analytics around it. But coming from the top down too, what do you want your customer experience to be like? And starting, big and then trying to figure out how to engineer that solution is a great way to look at it as well, to get outside the box.
I always love it when you get someone who's really into the chemistry with someone who's really about design thinking, and you don't have many in between. It's like,
you love
and I love sitting there. I love being there and helping them. No, it's great. I love that. There's sort of like this sort of tension that gets naturally created, and it's good. And it's sort of like you come up with the best things that way.
Right. Yeah, that could be really healthy. It's interesting to me. There's been a lot of changes around brainstorming. Right? And originally it was no idea was bad, let's get everything out on the table. And now they're saying, oh no, actually it's better to criticize the idea so that you can get down a better path together.
Oh, so this is why I like it so much when people say you can't do it?
Yes, exactly. And these are the issues, not prove me wrong.
So I want to ask you, what have I not asked you that people will be interested in?
Oh boy.
Something you're passionate about that didn't come up.
I'm passionate about running.
How much do you run a week?
Oh, I'm actually coming back from an injury. So I have 2 marathons at the end of this year that I'm trying to ramp back up for. But I'm on, week 2 of being back. So it's been tough. Yeah.
And how do you track? Because you said it's all about tracking. So I'm assuming you track a lot,
I'm such a data geek. Yeah.
I figured
how could you not be, right? So I have my fancy watch on to track my mileage and my heart rate and see how I'm doing on runs, and if I'm really having a bad run, or if my heart's actually working because it's too humid outside. So it's it's really interesting to understand.
I've heard. So I'm a terrible runner. I find running really boring. You give me a racket to hit a ball or do something. I'm a much better runner. Not a runner. But,
You're a chaser.
I'm a chaser. Yes, thank you. Now I know what I have a name now. I like it. But I've heard that there is a point when running becomes there's sort of like a payback. There's the runners. What is it called? There's a book about
Runner's High.
Yes. What is that? When does that happen? Where does that come from? Do you have that?
I do. I get that at about 3 miles after you warm up. and you just get into the zone, and you can, I don't know, I call it my moving meditation. So
Really? 3 miles, huh?
3 miles.
So I got to get over the 3
You
mile
have to get over the 3 mile hump.
Yeah, but I only warm up for half an hour. I never make it past 3. That's the problem. I take it now.
Right, yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. It was a super interesting conversation. I admire what you do. Thank you for doing all the stuff you do for us and for a better world. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed this conversation. Yeah.
And with that, we've come to the end of another coffee chat. Thanks for watching. If you missed any of today's show or want to see any past shows, click on our playlist. And with that, have a great day. Bye.